or too late.
All right.
Oh,
No problem. Cool. Okay, good. Where's everyone calling from?
Virginia for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's
the bridge in Marin?
You're Marin. What town are you in Virginia?
So I go to school at UVA, so I'm in Charlottesville.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm back in Seattle now. It's a little cold and
It's cold
and rainy. Yeah.
Oh, geez. We got a heat wave coming through here.
Yeah. I'm back in the Bay Area tomorrow, right?
Okay.
So
it'll be beautiful in San Francisco.
Yeah, the weather has been it was fantastic. I was there last week for the event, and I'll be there I'm only going to go to Mountain View tomorrow. There's like a hi
Gregory. How are you?
Good. Yeah, there's an event tomorrow at DeepMind that I wanted to go to. I was kind of tired. I was like traveling a lot. And my wife's like, you got invited to invite-only event at Google with the head of DeepMind is presenting, and I was like, yes. I was like, okay, I guess I should go to this thing. Like, so at the last minute, I booked a trip, and so I'll just go down to Mountain View tomorrow and stay for the event and come back on Friday. But I have so much going on, that's why I'm like not so keen to travel. It takes up so much of my time.
Yeah, I hear you.
Exactly. Shania, right?
Sonia.
Right. Sonia. Oh, that's how you pronounce it. Okay, good.
Yes. Yeah.
Where are you in Virginia also? Where are you calling from?
I'm at Georgia Tech right now, finishing my last semester. And then heading back to the Bay after.
How do you guys know each other?
We interned together last fall at NVIDIA and stayed in touch. Yeah.
That's cool.
Awesome. So Larry, they were at the first event that I did around TechCrunch, and they were very nice and volunteered to help out. And then Larry I met at the event I did last week at AWS.
Oh, nice.
How did that event go, the last one?
Well, Larry, what did you think?
I thought it was awesome. I really enjoyed the panel, and I also thought the 5 companies you chose to do the pitches were really interesting and excellent examples of how to get a product to market quickly and get market validation quickly, which I hear a lot of that feedback that need to do that from institutional investors. So I thought they were super interesting examples of how to do that and success stories for that. So anyways, I thought it was a cool event for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, you guys did the first one, and that one was like a scramble. I had a different space booked that canceled, another space canceled, and I ended up at this like Mexican restaurant, which it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. And so it was a bit of a struggle. So I actually got a lot of positive feedback from that first one that you guys did. And one of the ideas was like, hey, rather than just have like demos, why not have startups pitch? I was like, great idea. And so I threw it into the invite and was like, hey, if you want to pitch, send me your deck. And I ended up with like an overwhelming response. Like we had 60 decks. And that's why I like had to go back and the new one, like kind of update some of the processes to make it easier to manage. Cause like was getting them like randomly on my email. And I'm like, this is actually like a lot of work to control. So we got 60 and then we picked 5. And then Larry was saying, yeah, I thought they were excellent. They all had a lot of traction. They had raised money. Like they're pretty far along. Like it wasn't just some ideas that people had. And I did that on purpose. I wanted people to see that like the expectations, I think, in general in Silicon Valley today are really high with startups. Like they're not really funding ideas. They're not really funding like early prototypes. You see a little bit of it here and there, but in general, they're looking for startups that have traction, have great pedigree. The way I like to talk about it, and I think this makes it actually much easier for people to understand sometimes, is like when I looked at all those pitch decks that I got, there's all these exciting ones, and some of them were like technology I was really passionate about or teams I thought was cool. But then when I looked at it from like, if I had $1 million and I'm going to give it to somebody, where is the most likely opportunity for me to get a return? And when you do that, you have a very different lens and like what's cool, what's exciting, what's trendy. You're like, well, they're already making $1 million. Like giving them $1 million seems like much lower risk than someone that hasn't proved that they can generate any revenue or get any users at all, right? And so, yeah, so that's how we kind of looked at the pitches. Then it was at AWS. Like AWS has a beautiful space in San Francisco. I don't know if you guys have been there. They've got amazing space. They're big companies. They were kind of hard to work with. There was a lot of forms and paperwork and people I had to go through to make it happen. But the space was excellent. We'll do another event in May at a smaller space in San Francisco. So if you guys are available, like love to have you.
And Greg, when you had them pitch, so was their pitch decks what you were looking for in terms of like, give me 5 slides to explain this company, and then like, is that easier for you to manage? Because I certainly thought that whatever time constraint you put on them, it was very brief, like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, I can't remember. Yeah. I thought that format worked really well too, in terms of like, this is what we do, this is why it's working, this is how much, like it was bang, 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 right? That kind of thing. I assume that also is helpful for you in terms of future submissions and the like.
Yeah, great question. That I believe is the Y Combinator format when they do pitches. Like there's lots of pitch competitions and presentations out there, and usually they're fairly constrained in terms of like how much time people get. Like I've been to ones that are like 90 seconds, 3 minutes, 7 minutes, that type of thing. 1 slide, 3 slides. Like they're usually really, really narrow. I decided on 90 seconds for ours and 1 slide because I believe that is how Y Combinator does it. But I also thought it would make the best experience for the audience. So I'm looking at this more like from an entertainment perspective, or just keeping people interested. Like it's like a 3-minute pitch times 5 is 15 minutes just for pitching. And then people go over and then ask questions. I think people just get bored. And so that's why I went with that. I also think, and I think maybe this is the subtext of your question, when you're constrained like that, you're forced to put together a very concise pitch. And in my experience, that's where most entrepreneurs and technology people struggle. They can't explain things concisely. And like it or not, and everyone I've ever spoken to, they always will argue back with me like, it's complicated. I have a lot of technology. I'll have every reason under the sun. But the reality is, and like Charles, one of the investors who spoke at the event, was super clear. He's like, I look at thousands of pitch decks a year. What did he say? He said only 1% of them I can remember what they said, and I can clearly articulate it to other people. So it doesn't matter that your technology is complicated. Like the reality is that like things need to be able to be pitched in 9 seconds, and that's just the constraints there are, and that's what I went with.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Now, did you get, I'm just curious, when people submitted with you, were you getting 15-page slide pitch books, or were you getting much more condensed versions because your audience is kind of understanding this and used to know?
Yeah, no, it was a wide range of stuff. Like I didn't have any, I still don't have any guidelines or restrictions. There's stuff I wrote a long time ago and there's things out there, but I didn't provide any guidance. I got a real wide range of stuff in terms of submissions. Like if you guys, I don't know if you guys are at the pitch deck stage, you two, I know a little bit earlier, but like if you do a search, there's tons of stuff out there. And the one that I recommend is like Sequoia. Sequoia is like legendary investment firm, right? They have a format that they provide. They're like, follow this. I think it's 10 slides. And usually all the formats follow some method where it's like, what's the problem we're solving? What's the solution? Here's our product. Here's our team. Here's our traction. Here's our pricing. Here's our ads. It's pretty straightforward. And the expectation is like in a VC meeting, it's like 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Maybe there's a demo to kind of prove out the technology or just kind of show how it works, but they tend to be pretty streamlined. Yeah. Did you have a question? Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I can just give some background into where like Sonia and I are in the process, where we're coming from, and what we wanted some guidance on. So just from our experience working in enterprise, just through our internships at bigger companies, we kind of started early January building a product that was like multi-agent orchestration out of the box for enterprise. You just like can plug and play your agents, have it automatically be adapted into Google's like A to A framework and be discoverable. And then you can manage multi-agent orchestrations through this product. And that's kind of what we just immediately started trying to flesh out the demo. And we wanted to apply to YC, but we ended up getting a coffee chat with one of the YC partners, and the feedback we got was basically just, if you haven't validated this or talked to customers or done any like market research, then for all I know, this isn't a real problem. It's a fake problem. And we realized that we needed to go back to square one and not just build something, and just actually build something that people want. So we're kind of going back to like the customer discovery phase, and not being married to any one idea and just trying to figure out what people want. A lot of the feedback we've gotten is to, focus on a vertical, because we were building a more horizontal tool earlier, but we wanted some guidance into just like, if you have any guidance for like figuring out what kind of vertical to focus on and how to go about finding like early customers, and a way to go about market validation when you don't really have a direction starting off, because we're pretty early.
Yeah, it's a common question. I was talking with some entrepreneur yesterday too, who was like, how do I do customer discovery? How do I get people on the call? It's hard. I was like, you could pay them. He's like, well, that's expensive. I'm like, I know, but like, you got to get them to show up and share their time with you, and you got to offer some kind of value, right? And like, that's used to work. It's getting even more hard, I think, to get people's attention.
Yeah.
These days. So, I mean, I don't think there's any like single way to do this. And there's even like books that are written on this part of it, right? Like trying to understand and find problems to solve. Typically, and what I've seen is like someone's working at a tech company, and usually there's a problem that they're working on, and that's where the idea comes from of like what they want to try to solve and turn it into a business. So that's one method I've seen. There is a more like, I mean, I'm older, right? I've been around this business a long time. There used to be more of like literal inventions. So someone like literally like invented something. And this is even like, if you start to think big picture, like the hardware space. So it'd be some innovation, invention would come out, and they were like, how do we build a product around this? There was more of that happening in Silicon Valley in the old days. You could argue like maybe ChatGPT is still that. They had been all these researchers working on AI for like a long time. It's maybe like a core invention, and then like, wow, we've got this invention. How do we turn it into a business, right? So I guess there's like, so if I was like maybe like try to organize these into like methods. So there's like things that you're working on at work or let's say at work, and there's problems that you see and you figure a way to solve it and try to build a business around that. That's probably like one method. Second method is like, I literally have some kind of invention, like, and that's why the hardware side, I think it's more obvious. Like I invented this way to do this, or I have this patent, or I have this way to transform water into wine, right? I've got this amazing thing and I want to build a business around that, right? So I think that's method number two. I think there's method number three. I've seen it. I want to say it's maybe the least effective, but there's problems out in the market that you're aware of, and then you try to build a product around that to solve. I think the challenge with that is that a lot of the time you maybe don't have enough information to solve it effectively. It doesn't mean it can't be solved though. Like, and there's, I'm sure, tons of great examples of companies out there. There always are. Like at a high level, every unicorn, every really successful startup is an outlier, right? So you got to keep that in mind. Doesn't mean that it can't happen, but I think it's the most difficult one where like, hey, there's a problem out there that I'm aware of, and I'm going to build this thing, or I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to go out there and solve it.
I have one suggestion, which maybe you guys have already done, like, because kids, you guys, I'm older, I'm a little on the older side, for this, from the startup world. So this is, I don't, but I would put what your tool what your solution does, like a good requirements sort of description or document or something into Claude or ChatGPT. And then I would ask it what industries this might be, what pain points, to just basically associate vertical industries and pain points with what your tool does. And then suggest that how you could customize your tool to that problem or industry. Because it may surface very quickly some places where you can narrow your efforts. Maybe you've already done this, I don't know, but this is the kind of use case I find these AI tools to be super helpful with.
Yeah. Oh, I got an interesting. Do you want to say something? I can keep talking, but do you have a question?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say, like, I just remembered, like, there's a guy I met on Reddit who had a successful startup. And this is maybe one of the methods I'm really excited about. And this might work for you. So maybe it's like the third method. So the third method, like find a problem and solve it. But I've been actually talking to a lot of people lately about, like, how do you put like a methodology around that? And what this guy told me he did was he made like 30 or 40 different like landing pages. So not even really prototypes. They're like marketing prototypes. They were like, this is what it would look like in terms of like the buyer. And he even like linked it up to a Stripe page. So he would, like, I don't know, I do stuff like this all the time, like buy a URL, come up with a funny idea, and then build some kind of like demo or product around it, and then, link it to Stripe. And so he did this a bunch of times, and until he stumbled on one that was a huge success. It got funded, and it's a giant company. He even said that Jason Calacanis funded it from, All In Podcast. So I love this idea, because I think people like you are good at like coming up with a clever idea, maybe register a domain. It's really cheap to do this. And then you can kind of create something and put it out there. And if you get traction, cool. This is how like I started Vibe Your SaaS. So I've been around and I worked at all these tech companies, and I'm not going to go into all that. You can read about that. But I was doing fractional for a while, and it wasn't great. Or I just was like freelancing. I didn't have much of a vision for what I wanted to do. And it was right when vibe coding came out. And it was my last day at this AI startup. And a friend of mine was like, hey, you're doing all this really interesting go-to-market stuff. Why don't you just focus on early stage companies and founders? You're really passionate about it. You love it. And I wasn't that narrowly focused on what I was doing. And I'm like, that's a cool idea. And I was like, look, I'm going to call it Vibe Your SaaS. Like vibe coding, all this stuff just came out. And so I like that day, like registered the URL, like vibeyoursas.com. Like, wow, this is available. Okay, that's just funny and cool. I like it. Built a landing page. It was like relatively vague. It said like marketing for startup founders, sign up here, like whatever. And I just thought it was kind of like a fun idea. I launched it, like I tweeted it out and I put on LinkedIn, and I had some followers, right? So I had some audience. But by Monday, I had 50 people sign up. And it didn't say a whole lot. I think part of the excitement about it was the mystery, like what is this exactly? And then through the signups, like I had 50 people sign up, I sent an email, and I had a link to kind of like this demo product I had, where it was like take you through like launching your startup, and it had a bunch of materials. Yeah, looks like she dropped off.
Yeah.
And then I had 2 people sign up that week, and I sold the first 2 consulting packages for Vibe Your SaaS that way. So I'm a big advocate of that kind of approach. You made it. You're back. I think
I think my Wi-Fi's been fitting.
I think I launched that product, or the Vibe Your SaaS concept, and I had like 2 people sign up and pay within the first week. Even my wife was like, wow, this is cool. You're really onto something. And I kept growing it from there. And so that's the thing I like to talk about with a lot of people. If like you're young and maybe you don't have that much experience, or you want to do something else, right? Like maybe you work at some job and the whole industry is not something that you're excited about. Like just throw some stuff out there and see what sticks, right? Like I've had other people like really not happy with this as an approach. I talked to a few people, and I would say they're older and there's more of a methodology that they like to work with. They were like not happy with this approach at all. But I think this like just throw out a bunch of stuff at the wall and see if you can make it stick is a totally valid way to do things. And I know people who've been successful with it, and I think it's really low cost and easy to do these days. I think that like older people are really stuck in these like laborious like methodologies, because that's the way things used to have to be done, because they're much more expensive. So with vibe coding and all of the things that are available, you can just spin up prototypes. You can spin up final products like in a week. So why even bother with like spending a year doing customer discovery and spending all this money, time, resources when you could just make 50 prototypes and see if they work? So I don't know. Maybe that's an idea for you guys.
Yeah.
To that end, so do you think it's better for us to approach customer discovery with a prototype already and a landing page, something to show? Because we've not been kind of showing people what we've built so far and like what the vision is, and we've just been asking open questions to people about what their pain points are, getting them to see if they would use this product. But we've been having mixed results with that.
Yeah, that's a really, I think it's actually a really complicated question. And I think the answer is the one that I hate to give people, which is it depends. So you gotta okay, maybe it's a spectrum. So on one hand, there are ideas that are obviously easy to execute on, and they maybe don't require the same level of like prototyping or examples in order to get people to understand what you're doing. On the other angle, or the other hand, or on the other side of the spectrum, there are things that are much more difficult to execute on, and they would require that, right? So I think it depends on where you land and what you're trying to do and like what skills you have and what you're good at. I want to say at a high level, it's more important to see like if you could put something together that people want to buy, and that execution to some degree is a secondary consideration. But I'm gonna be really careful about saying that because there are things out there that still are really hard to execute on. So it depends on, I'll give you examples. Like I talked to a startup recently that was doing prototypes for SpaceX. And so they actually manufacture like components and they're so difficult to do the stuff. They had to buy a fabrication plant in Dallas to help them with the prototypes. So I just had a high level, if you think of like the totality of concepts that you could start, like just throwing a landing page saying like, I make space prototypes, executing on that stuff is really, really hard. So I just wanted to like, just get a better perspective that like, there are still businesses out there where the execution piece is really important. So with those guys, they bought this fabrication piece and like at a high level, they don't need a lot of marketing because there's very few people that can actually execute on this stuff. And they have some kind of software to improve the process to make it cheaper and easier to build all these prototypes. So like I said, it depends. It's a wide range of stuff.
Makes sense.
Yeah. You can put a link that we can make a space prototype in 6 weeks. And like, I don't know, can you really do it? So anyway.
I wanted to shift the question or shift the conversation a little bit. So I know you probably work with like a portfolio of companies that through Vibe Your SaaS. So a problem we've been having is like with all the new tools coming out, like all the time, you go on X, you go on LinkedIn, you see so many tools. Have your startups been struggling with like, I'm assuming if they're AI products, have they been struggling with maintaining their moat? And do you help with that at all?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean,
your panel talked about this, Greg. The fog. I think this is the fog of war question or theme in my mind.
Correct. Yeah, at a high level, there's so much coming out. Like, no one knows what to do. Like, so that he's saying is like the investors talked about this, that like the innovation's happening so fast. There are clearly products that were defensible like 6 months to a year ago that are no longer. I'll even give an example like my own like workflow. Like there used to be like a host of tools I needed to do like video. So to put captions on video, God, maybe a year ago, there was like a dedicated tool I used to use. Now it's just built into every video editing platform I use, right?
Yeah, and I think that's why we were trying to shift away from something more horizontal to something like more vertically integrated in like one industry. But then that kind of brings us to that like chicken and the egg thing. Like, do we want to pitch what we were doing before, which was more horizontal and not necessarily related to one certain industry that we didn't actually get any customer traction for? We just decided to build, or is it the other way around? Like, should we get some sort of signal from someone in the industry and then build a prototype based off of that? Because right now also we don't really have a structured approach for reaching out to even like one specific vertical. We're just reaching out on LinkedIn in general. And I think the kinds like Sonia, for instance, has been reaching out to people who are already in the AI space, and they're saying completely different things from like the people I've reached out to, which is more like legacy sectors that haven't really worked with AI at all. And like that's a different approach of bringing AI to them, and they're not as knowledgeable about agents, and to them the idea of implementing agents is more difficult than the business value that it's bringing. So we're just having trouble consolidating the responses from the people that are getting back to us into like one clear vision too.
Yeah. I think what Larry's saying is like it's a really confusing time, and maybe that's why the feedback is so confusing. Like it's moving so rapidly, things are changing so quickly. I think people can't separate like the hype from the reality. Like maybe the AI labs, I think, can't separate hype from reality. Like I think they're maybe pushing it a bit, right? Like there's a little bit of hype around like what Dario and Sam's saying. Maybe there's like a lot of hype around what they say. But on the other hand, like they are moving really rapidly, and the stuff is getting way better. So in a year from now, what will it be like? Like no one knows the answer to that question. So I think that that's one of the things you're facing, is just that like there's just so much uncertainty right now. But I think that means that like there's some obvious ways to manage that. Like one is like do more consulting. So just try to like learn and work with people and get a perspective that way. The other thing is like, did you look at like the Y Combinator, like what is it called for startups? They had like a bunch of categories. A lot of them were consultancies.
Yeah.
Right. They wanted like AI native agencies. So there is a whole like category perhaps of products that there's some like if you start an AI native agency, you're fairly open to like who you can work with, and you can kind of like learn through execution. Where if you have a really clearly defined product that solves like one simple problem, you really have to commit to a certain segment or something like that. So maybe there are other ways to kind of like think about what you're doing. I think Atlassian started as a consultancy. They were doing consulting. The market was pretty weak at the time, and I think they made that as an internal tool. Same thing with Slack, right? They were working on a game, and then they built their own internal chat, and they're like, "This thing's pretty cool," and then they like turn that into a product.
And what would you say is like sufficient traction to, commit to a certain direction and move forward? I guess that's like a variable thing, but
that's such a hard question. I mean, when you're really early too, I always tell everyone that like, look, you got to be crazy to do this, because in the beginning, the feedback is bad. You're not going to get like, you have to be, what I call it, you've got to be stubbornly stupid. Like in the really early days, like you're not going to have great feedback. The product is going to have a lot of issues. Like it is really tough. And like all the data that you would get would tell you like to not do it. So like early stage companies and like going from 0 to 1 is really hard, in the sense that like there's not a lot of signals, and you can't really like A/B test or use data to quantify your way to get where you need to go. And I think that's the hardest part. And there's a lot of people who say they accept that, but they actually don't accept that. I also think that that's why big companies are really bad at like launching new products, because the expectation internally is like, hey, okay, by 6 weeks, like what are your KPIs? Where are you going to be? Are you going to have like XYZ figured out, right? And so a lot of times the team just gives them that stuff, and then they like put all of their effort and energy into like meeting the KPIs rather than like building a great product. And so that's why there's startups, because like it's so hard for big companies to go from zero to 1. And I even think that that's the simplest way for me to describe what I think AI is bad at. I think AI also can't go from 0 to 1. I think you need to give it something, and then it can refine it, execute it, make it more efficient. But it can't come up with if I tell it like write 10 tweets for me, even with all of like my training data and everything, it doesn't write anything good. Just like I need 10 tweets for next week. They all will just be horrendous. I have to tell it like it needs to be a meme. It needs to like be maybe in this category, or like I have to give it some direction. And so I think for you guys, like you need to like spend some time like stumbling around, I think, to go to 0 to 1. Like it's just really hard and there's not going to be a lot of data. I think that's going to make it easier. I'll give you one other example. This is my favorite example. I think so, Larry, I think I'll summarize like what they said at the event. So Charles Hudson and Ulas, I can't remember his last name, their talks were excellent. And I think they both really hit on this problem, like 0 to 1. And that the way I would frame it, and the way I've written a lot about this, like it goes back to like big companies are bad at doing things that are non-obvious. So big companies are working on all the obvious problems, right? Like Microsoft is working on very obvious things. Google's working on very obvious things. Like I think Google's probably going to win consumer AI. It looks like OpenAI has given up, right? So the things that are really obvious, big companies are doing a great job at like launching new products, iterating, introducing things that are like adjacent to where they are. They can usually win in that space. So what it means is that startups need to work on things that are non-obvious, but also have potential. So it's a very like odd space. That's what I meant by like it's stubbornly stupid, or what I've said in the past is that you have to do things that are like just dumb enough to work. And my favorite example of this is Twitter. So when Twitter launched, everyone thought it was really stupid. I don't know if you guys weren't around, but like they had blogging, and then someone's like, I have a 140 character microblog that comes to you as a text message. And people are like, this is the dumbest product I've ever heard of, right? But it took off because it had some advantages. It was mobile first. It was one of the, like, not mobile first, but one of the first, like, mobile first products. So not only was it mobile first, but one of the first people to, like, show that there could be mobile first products, like, before smartphones. And it was, like, real time. It had all of these advantages, right? But if you pitch Twitter as, like, a micro blogging tool that only supports 140 characters, it sounds like a really dumb thing, but it turned out to be quite brilliant and be really original and very successful, right? So it's my favorite example of like startups need to focus on these problems that are like, they're too stupid for big companies to do, but they're just stupid enough that they'll actually work. And I also think this explains like why all these things get funded that are stupid. So investors are smart in Silicon Valley. They're investing in things that are non-obvious that like big companies won't do. So that's why they invest in things that are like, wow, like that sounds like not a really smart idea. Because sometimes these things that are not smart work, but they tend to not invest in things that are obvious, because if they're really obvious, big companies will succeed. Or even let's say you're successful in an obvious area, big company can step in really quickly and just destroy you. And that happens all the time.
I have a little bit of a further along question in terms of just where we are. And maybe I should just give you like the two things, like the quick reminder of what we do. So we offer an ambient scribe, and if you guys, I don't know if you know what that is, but it's, you take it to the doctor with you, it records the conversation.
Yeah.
Now, doctors are using these things for themselves, but there are not any real products for patients themselves. Like the patient downloads it, the patient records it, AI uses the patient to make better decisions. And that's where we're playing. I won't go through our genesis of where we, but there is a huge, to your point, it's sort of in some ways obvious, but there are a lot of, in healthcare, structural reasons why people haven't gone direct to the patient to do this before, which I won't bore you with.
I know a lot about this space, actually. Yeah, keep going.
Okay, so the way we've decided to monetize it is we're working with self-insured employers. We're going to them and saying, if you deploy this app with your higher cost employees, we'll help you increase adherence, lower unnecessary utilization, and give you insights that help you do better plan designs and intervention programs, basically. So initially, now we're very early in this type of conversation, like 2 or 3 months in. We're talking to 3 companies about pilots. This is sort of where it all leads is, what is validation here that would get someone interested? Is it we're being paid? Is it, because this world is a little bit funky. Like there's sort of a I don't say cultural norm, but it's like, well, let me try it on let me get 500 people using it for 5 months or 6 months, and then we'll decide whether or not it's something we want to pay for, which is just, it's a time thing. That's fine. But I don't know the degree to which we need to be pushing to say, listen, we need to be paid, whether it's a huge discount or whatever it is. But after 3 months, we need to start monetizing to show investors this is real. Like, that's a conversation we're sort of actually having with people at the moment. I'm just, I guess, in the broader context of that, what is traction? Is it a high number of pilots? Is it I got to have revenue? Is it I have to have until I have $1 million of ARR, people aren't interested? Like, do you know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to get a sense for, every story is different, but what really is a validation and attraction, point that I can leverage going forward for all of the raise.
Well, I mean, dude, investors have been super clear, like in the AI space, like what they're looking for in terms of traction, right? They want things that are like doubling and tripling every month, every quarter. Like they want ridiculous numbers, right? Like Cursor, the thing's over $2 billion now. So like, if you just like look at the things that have gotten funded, like the traction numbers are just insane. So expectations are really high.
It's interesting though, because you use those as examples, and I don't remember if it was Charles or Ula. I can't remember his full name either.
Ulas, yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember who, but I think it was Charles who talked about, it's an interesting conundrum in some ways, because some stories can double or triple very quickly, but there's a ceiling, right?
Yes.
And some stories might be more of a slower burn, but there's a much bigger TAM and market opportunity, right? And just using like Cursor as an example, and by the way, I've used it and we use it, but we also switch in between tools all the time. So there's like one thing my co-founder, who's really the tech guy, talks about is, I don't know what the moat is for any given one of these companies, because the underlying models all go back to a similar place, and for whatever product enhancements here and there, we do Codex and then Cursor and then I don't know, Flight Time or whatever one of the other ones is, right? We're sort of always switching back and forth. So that's an example of sort of this tension of like, I get why these tools took off. I also wonder if each one of them has a ceiling to them, and maybe they don't. I don't know. But we're in a much different space where we're going to enterprises, and this is about, getting your employees on our app for their healthcare management. That's a very different sort of story, where I don't see a lot of competition for where we're positioning there. There's a lot of apps that do this type of stuff, but there's no one that you take to
I think I know the way to break down your, like, let's say, question pretty simply. If you're an independent investor and you're a private market investor, and really your goal is to like maximize your investments, all you want is the companies that have the most traction, right? That's it. So that's why they're gravitating to these companies that are growing so fast.
Yeah.
Because they're just private investors, right? So there are people that focus on different verticals and have different requirements, right? In healthcare, there are people that have like healthcare specific funds. There's corporate investors who will put money into these things because they need these things in the ecosystem. So I think your question is more about like, hey, how do I find the investors that are the right fit for me? That's why understanding their motivations is really important, right? So if you're like A16Z, like that company is or that investment firm is, their mission is to make money, and they want to make it as quickly, as fast as possible, and they want to make as much as possible. So they don't care that it's like a healthcare, whatever it is. It doesn't matter to them. What matters to them is like, will this return? It was like what I said originally about the pitches. I said, if I have $1 million, who am I going to give this to? And I have the highest degree of confidence that they're going to create value with it, right? But that doesn't mean that there aren't other opportunities and other investors and people that are appropriate for your space. It does perhaps mean that like the top investment firms are maybe not a good fit, right? So maybe don't waste your time with like companies that are putting all this effort and energy in these high growth AI companies. You want to find people that are more closely aligned with like your mission. And there are people out there, right? There are investment firms that have like a mandate that they only invest in healthcare or something like that. And so just put your time and effort into those.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's kind of where we've been leaning.
Yeah. So it's just like getting really clear about what you do and what makes the most sense. And then perhaps understanding like the rest of the market and like why it's not a good fit, like ruling things out, and so you don't waste a lot of time on those things. Right? Like the expectations are really high in these AI products that are just growing so rapidly. So they're great. Let them chase those things, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's just different, and it's not exactly what you guys are looking for.
That makes sense.
Really quick, Gregory, I was wondering if you are working with any like dev tools companies right now, through Vibe Your SaaS.
I have, I think so. I have one company that they're like a it's not really, it doesn't really focus on, it's not what you mean by a developer tool. It's a platform where they are able to provide, it's like, I'm trying to describe it. I'm like spacing out right now. They have like, oh, I know. They have the same technology used in like a research lab for psychology. So there's like games in a lab that like you can use to train your mind, and it'll improve like your memory and all these things. So they have that technology, and they can implement it into real games. So you could play like Tetris, and it'll actually influence the gameplay in order to do what you want it to do. Do you want to be more relaxed? Do you want to be more excited? Do you want to get focused? It's really cool. So they focus on developers. They focus on game developers that put their platform into that tool. But they're not, what I think you mean is like literally like, hey, I'm a developer and I need help with my coding tools. I talked to one guy, they're not a customer. I talked to a company called Kanu, and they have like a vibe coding tool that is Amazon specific. So it's able to go into your AWS instance and then read all the code and then help you do like coding that is specific to Amazon. Because like Cursor and a lot of the other IDEs that are out there right now, they really struggle with that type of thing. And so maybe this is helpful. Like I think there will emerge vertical or different segments in the tool space, because when you start to dive into different types of development, it is actually really difficult, and the tools that they have won't be universal across everything. Maybe in long term maybe they'll acquire them all and they'll all get integrated. But there's definitely challenges in the development space where there's dedicated tools. I think makes sense.
That makes sense. That's a good insight I didn't think of.
Yeah, so there's probably like one that would work on Azure, and then one that would work on Google Cloud, and there's probably other aspects of development where there's tools that would work. The tool space is really hard though, because the sales part is hard. So you got to sell to engineers. You know, they're really difficult to sell to, and then you have to bring a lot of value, right? Like, okay, we buy this, and what happens? Do we get to like reduce the team size? Which is a hard sale, right? You're like, oh, you got to fire some people. Like, it's not necessarily an easy way to sell a product into an engineering team.
Right. That makes sense.
Any other questions? I think I'm in a minute. I gotta run.
No, I know you got to run. This was great. Hopefully I'll see you at the next event, Greg, and hopefully we have some traction to talk about. But we'll
fantastic. And send your deck and stuff, because like I'm gonna have people demo at the next one as well. I didn't do the Amazon because it was like just I had plenty to manage. But the next one we'll do 5 pitches and we'll have 5 demos. So the bar will be different for demos. Like that way we can just like anyone who we think is interesting.
Yeah, cool. Awesome.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you guys. Good luck. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.